There are some confessions that people keep inside their hearts forever, not because they are secrets, but because they were never noticed. This is one of those confessions. I loved you more than my life, and the saddest part is you never even realized it. Loving you never felt like a decision. It happened naturally, slowly, quietly, like rain that begins with a few drops before turning into a storm. At first, I only cared about you a little. Your smile made my day better. Your messages made ordinary moments feel special. But as time passed, that small feeling grew into something much deeper, something stronger than I expected. You became the first person I wanted to talk to in the morning, and the last person I wanted to hear from before sleeping. Every small detail about you started mattering to me. Your mood, your problems, your happiness, your silence, everything. Because when someone becomes important to your heart, even their smallest emotions feel important. But loving someone deeply doesn't always mean they will see it. Sometimes love stays invisible. And that's exactly what happened with me. You saw my messages, but you never saw the effort behind them. You heard my words, but you never heard the feelings hidden inside them. You noticed my presence, but you never understood its value. I was always there for you when you were stressed, when you were sad, when you needed someone to listen. I stayed, even when it meant ignoring my own feelings, even when it meant sacrificing my time, because loving you made your happiness feel more important than my own. Sometimes you asked me simple questions. Why do you care so much? I used to smile and say, that's just how I am. But the truth was different. The truth was, I loved you more than I ever loved anyone, and I was afraid that if I told you directly, you might not feel the same way. So I showed my love quietly, through patience, through attention, through loyalty. But quiet love is often misunderstood because the louder people are, the more attention they get, and the quieter hearts stay unnoticed. There were moments when I wished you would finally realize it, moments when I hoped you would look at me and say, I see everything you do for me, but that moment never came. To you, I was just someone who cared, someone who was always around, someone who would stay no matter what. And that's the dangerous part. When someone knows you won't leave, they stop noticing your value. One day I asked myself a painful question. What if they never realize how much you love them? The thought broke something inside me because love is not just about giving. Sometimes you also want to feel seen, to feel appreciated, to feel like your emotions matter. But in your world, my love became normal, almost invisible. Here's my honest confession. I never regretted loving you deeply, even though it hurt, even though it was not always returned the same way, because loving someone sincerely is never a mistake. But I did wish one thing. I wish you had noticed, not the big things, just the small sacrifices, the quiet loyalty, the way I stayed, even when it wasn't easy. Sometimes people only understand love after it's gone, after the messages stop, after the presence disappears, after the person who cared the most finally becomes silent. And maybe one day you will look back and realize something, that someone loved you more than their own life, not loudly, not dramatically, but sincerely. And the saddest truth of all is that you never noticed it while it was still there, after realizing that you never truly noticed how deeply I loved you. I didn't stop loving you. That's the strange thing about real feelings. They don't disappear the moment you understand the truth. They stay quietly, even when your heart knows it's hurting. For a long time, I kept doing the same things. I checked on you. I listened to your problems. I supported you when life became difficult. You trusted me with your worries. You shared your frustrations with me, and I stayed there, always ready to help. But slowly, I started seeing something clearly. You saw me as someone dependable, someone loyal, someone who would always be around. But you never saw me as someone whose heart was quietly breaking. You laughed with me, talked with me, shared stories with me, but you never looked closely enough to see what was hidden behind my patience. The truth was simple. You liked having me in your life, but you never realized how deeply I loved you. There were moments when I almost told you everything, moments when the words were ready to escape my heart. I love you more than you understand, but every time I thought about saying it, fear stopped me. Not the fear of rejection, but the fear that you might smile kindly and say, I never saw you that way, and I wasn't ready to hear that. So instead of confessing loudly, I continued loving quietly. I thought maybe one day you would notice the way I looked at you. Maybe one day you would understand the meaning behind my care. Maybe one day something would make you realize how important you were to me. But that day never came. Instead, life kept moving forward. You met new people. You built new connections. And I remained the same quiet presence in your life, supportive, patient, invisible. And that's when I started understanding something painful. Sometimes love exists only on one side, not because the other person is cruel, but because they simply don't see the depth of your feelings. One night, I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. If they never notice your love, will you keep giving it forever? The answer scared me because for a long time I would have said yes, but that night something inside me changed. Not the love, just the way I treated my own heart. I realized that loving someone should not mean losing yourself. It should not mean hiding your pain. It should not mean staying invisible just to keep someone in your life. Love should feel mutual, balanced, seen. That's when I slowly started stepping back, not dramatically, not with anger, just quietly. The same way my love had always existed, quietly. I stopped trying so hard to be everywhere in your life, stopped being the first to reach out, stopped ignoring my own feelings just to make sure you were comfortable, and something unexpected happened. For the first time in a long time, I started noticing myself again, my own thoughts, my own dreams, my own worth. Because when you spend too much time loving someone who doesn't notice, you forget that your heart also deserves attention. Here's my confession. I still care about you. That part of me hasn't disappeared. But now I also care about myself, and that balance changed everything. Because love should never be something that only one person feels deeply. Maybe one day you will look back and remember me. Maybe you will think about the person who always supported you, the one who listened patiently, the one who never walked away when things were difficult. And maybe then you will realize something, that someone loved you more than their own life, but they loved you so quietly that you never noticed it while it was happening. After everything, after the quiet love, after the waiting, after the painful realization that you never truly noticed how much you meant to me, I finally understood something that took me a long time to accept. Love alone is not enough. No matter how deep it is, no matter how sincere it is, if only one heart is carrying the weight, eventually it becomes too heavy. For a long time, I believed that patience would change things, that if I stayed loyal long enough, if I cared enough, if I kept supporting you through every moment, one day you would finally look at me and see the truth. But love is not something that should require proof every single day. The right person notices naturally, without being told, without being reminded. One evening I looked back at everything we had shared, all the conversations, all the memories, all the moments when I was there for you, and I asked myself something honestly for the first time. If you disappeared from their life, would they feel the same emptiness you feel now? The answer was painful, but it was clear. Maybe you would miss me a little. Maybe you would remember me sometimes. But the depths of that loss would never match the depth of my love. And that's when I realized something important. I had spent so much time loving you that I forgot to love myself the same way. I gave you patience. I gave you attention. I gave you loyalty. But I forgot that my own heart deserved those things too. So I made a quiet decision, not a dramatic goodbye, not a painful argument, just a silent step back, the same way my love had always existed, quietly. I stopped waiting for messages, stopped hoping you would suddenly notice the love I carried for you, stopped believing that one day everything would magically change, because sometimes the most painful truth is also the most freeing one. Not every love story is meant to become a forever story. Here's my final confession. I don't regret loving you, even though you never truly noticed it, because loving sincerely is never something to feel ashamed of. It means my heart was real, my feelings were genuine, and my loyalty was honest. But I also learned something powerful from this experience. Never stay where your love remains unseen, because real love doesn't stay invisible forever. Real love gets noticed, appreciated, returned. And if it doesn't, then the person who gave that love deserves